Hi folks, I'm Chris Marshall with Woodworkers Journal magazine. Managing dust in our workshops is important, both for good health and in order to keep things clean. And I really think we should demand good dust collection from all of our woodworking machines, and that includes miter saws. But as you might know from your own experience, not all miter saws do a great job of containing the dust they make, and they make a surprising amount of it. That's why in my recent review of these 7 10-inch sliding compound miter saws, I thought it important to evaluate these saws on the dust collection front, in addition to testing them for power, accuracy, good features, and so on. Now, if you only use a miter saw occasionally, or outside where dust isn't all that noticeable, maybe dust collection isn't a big deal for you. But if you've got a small shop or you work in the basement where fresh air is limited, or if you have to take your miter saw to an indoor job site and you don't want to leave a big mess behind, you're going to want a saw that does a reasonably good job at corralling its own dust. Now, I don't have a test lab, but I still wanted to make the dust collection aspect of this miter saw test as sensible and practical as possible. I also wanted to make sure that all of these saws had the best chances for dust collection effectiveness. So the first thing I did was to ditch these standard dust bags. This is a passive form of dust collection and not very efficient. Then I connected each saw to either a shop vacuum or a dust extractor, and which of those machines I could use depended on the saw. In the case of this Craftsman saw, for instance, it has a 2¼ inch inside diameter dust port which fits a standard shop vacuum hose. But many of these saws have smaller 35mm or about 1 3/8" dust ports, and those are intended for a dust extractor hose. Now, both of these two machines are about medium duty, and they were clean and empty when I started each cutting test. But even a good dust extractor or shop vacuum isn't going to catch all the dust produced by a miter saw, and that's what I really wanted to evaluate. How well does each saw's internal dust channeling system actually work? So in order to catch that residual dust, I built this trap. And it's really simple. It's nothing more than an oversized cardboard box, large enough to shroud the saws from behind, with a piece of plastic laminate bent to a gradual curve and glued to the inside. The purpose of the laminate was to act as a backboard so the spraying sawdust would enter the box, drop down, and I could clean it out easily later. I used this same trap for each of the saw's cutting tests. Also, every saw was outfitted with the same new Freud 80-tooth ultimate cutoff saw blades to help level the playing field. That way the blades would cut about the same particle size of dust and produce about the same amount of sawdust, regardless of the saw. Finally, I started making test cuts, lots and lots of them. In fact, for each saw in the test, I made 100 repetitive cuts on some thick, wide, hard maple like this. During the entire cutting process, I kept the shop vacuum or extractor turned on, and I gave them time to clear out the saw's dust collection port after the very last cut. And when I finally turned the saws and shop vacuums off, I carefully swept up the dust from the saws, the general bench area, the floor, and inside the trap. I collected each saw's dust in separate marked containers. And you can guess the next step. I dumped out and weighed the contents of sawdust for each saw on a digital scale, which I first zeroed out for the glass plate I placed on top. So what did I learn about dust collection after all this cutting? Well, for one thing, over 100 cuts, each of these saws produced almost 3 pounds of dust. That alone was interesting because that's a lot of dust. But what didn't end up in the dust extractor or shop vacuum varied quite a bit from saw to saw. And for me, that was even more interesting. A couple of the saws, like DeWalt's DW717, did an exceptional job of channeling dust into a dust extractor. You can see in this close-up footage just how cleanly it cuts. But there was a continuum of less efficiency across the test group, and not all the saws did as well. In this second close-up footage of this Bosch saw, you can see how much sawdust it blows around from cut to cut. After 100 test cuts, I had a lot more mess to clean up. So, how about the results? Well, DeWalt's DW717 and Ridgid's MS255SR were the big winners in this dust collection test. Each of these saws only left about an ounce of sawdust behind after 100 cuts. And then, in descending order, we've got Craftsman's 10-inch compact slide at 1.3 ounces of sawdust, Kobalt's SM2507LW and Ryobi's TSS102L saws left just over 2 ounces of sawdust behind, just about tied one another, followed by Makita's LS1016L saw at 4.45 ounces, and finally Bosch's CM10GD saw at 13.4 ounces. But regardless, whatever saw you decide to buy, whether it's one of these saws or another one, be sure to do what you can to improve your saw's dust collection efficiency. Hook it up to a shop vacuum or dust extractor if at all possible, and at the very least, use the tool's dust bag. And if you're sensitive to wood dust, be sure to wear a dust mask when you saw. I hope this video has been helpful in your buying decision. Happy sawing, and thanks for watching.